Hi there! As a BL fan who likes to read between the lines, I enjoy taking a closer look at the world of BL and analyzing it according to certain subjects. In each video, I take on a subject in an informative and hopefully entertaining way and express my thoughts with the help of a co-narrator. May I introduce my co-narrator?
我梦上飞不怕再被你告。
From History 3, Trapped. Together, we bring you Listening to myself in some of my previous videos, I realized that I used the word toxic a few times to talk about characters and storylines. I never actually went into what makes them toxic, though, and I need to address that. Very often on the internet, the word has been misused because of its attention-grabbing effect. I want to keep using the word for appropriate situations, but I want to be very clear on which situations those are and why. Trigger warning. In this video, I will show multiple scenes of violence, abuse, and sexual assault, and talk about these topics. There are also some spoilers ahead, not of any drama ending, but some important plot points. Let me start with the meaning of the word toxic and the relevant social setting that I use it in. An action or plan of action that is intended to be harmful, or is harmful, meaning that it causes somebody physical, psychological, emotional, or social damage. This can be individual actions or repeated behaviors and intentions. I would also like to differentiate between toxic and problematic. Problematic, as it sounds, means that something is or can be a problem, but isn't as inherently harmful as something that is toxic. I reserve the word toxic for extreme, irredeemable cases. The line separating the meanings of these two terms is subjective and often very subtle, so I'm sure some disagreements will arise over when to use which term. I will get to some examples of this differentiation between toxic and problematic later on. When I say that something is toxic or harmful in Asian BL, I mean that it's harmful to the characters, but also potentially to the people who consume the stories. Stories leave a lasting impact on their readers and viewers, even if it's small. Even if you are bored by something, that's also an impact. There is always something that you remember or learn from a story. That's an integral part of it. And you can learn things from a story that are toxic for you or for somebody in your life. So how the creators frame their stories will have an impact on the consumers and how they see a story. When it comes to any creative narrative work, which BL stories and BL dramas are, every creator has a standpoint from which they write their stories. This means that every creator has emotions and opinions on what happens in their story, and this colors how they conceive of it and how they tell it. This is noticeable in how they frame what happens, whether they present it as good, bad, funny, or sad. Even a relatively neutral outlook has its own standpoint from where it comes. I say relatively neutral because it's not possible to be completely neutral on anything. We always have an opinion that is shaped by our knowledge and experiences, no matter how strong it is. This framing of the story, the characters, and what happens in the plot is the main factor that makes something toxic in a story. Let me explain what this looks like by diving right into when I use the word toxic. For the more obvious examples of toxic behavior, there are plenty of characters who are written as people whose intentions are obviously to cause other people harm. They are also framed as being bad people, and often as the obstacles that the main characters have to overcome to achieve happiness. These characters are uncaring about the other people's pain, and refuse to see anything wrong with what they are doing. The harm they cause the other characters is made apparent, and they make no attempt to make things right or to change their behavior. These characters don't usually have a negative impact on the consumers, since they are framed as being bad people, and therefore to be avoided and not to be imitated. I still consider them toxic, but I don't think it's a bad thing to have them in stories. They can be examples of people to avoid, and not to become yourself. Now for the examples of behavior that are harmful, but that are framed by the creator as being good, or at least to be tolerated when they are actually quite serious. When harmful actions are framed in a positive way, they are usually justified in that they are done to bring the characters together, or are allowed because the two men are already in a relationship. This includes forcing or coercing one of the main characters, usually the one in the uke role, into all sorts of situations that they originally didn't want to be in. From forced working situations, forced living situations, down to sexual assault and physical pain. Coercion is a non-violent form of forcing somebody to do something they don't want to do. This is when you use emotional and psychological tactics, including intimidation and threats of violence, to manipulate somebody into doing what you want. The uke on the receiving end usually ends up accepting this situation, despite some initial resistance. The way most of these scenarios are framed in a positive light is mainly with the acceptance of the uke and with some positive outcomes. When it comes to sexual assault scenes, they are often framed as alright in how the scenes are shot and edited, sometimes with warm lighting, with suggestive or romantic music, and with seemingly no lasting negative effects on the ukes. The perpetrators, usually seimes, are framed as having good intentions in the context of an aspired or existing relationship. This starts out as problematic with small things and becomes more and more toxic with increasingly bad actions. I would even go so far as to say that some seimes are given a pass for doing almost everything bad to their love interest in the quest for chasing them or keeping them in a relationship. And I find that really disturbing at times. Possessiveness is another trait that usually takes on toxic proportions. For somebody to consider their partner to be theirs to the point that they can't see anybody else get close to them, get seriously angry when they feel that their partner is moving away from them too much, or even just if their partner does something that they don't agree with, they effectively strip their partner of their autonomy and independence. Relationship dynamics that are built on one of the partners, in most cases in BL the seime, exerting his control over the submissive uke, are very toxic because of the distinct power imbalance between them. Here is where I'm going to start separating toxic from problematic, and maybe split a few hairs along the way. Just now I talked about possessiveness and the power imbalance it can create. There are some situations where possessiveness doesn't create a toxic dynamic. The key is consent given by the person who's on the receiving end of the possessive treatment, and most importantly, consent given in advance of the possessive partner acting like that. The one on the receiving end needs to enjoy this possessiveness, not be stressed out by it. In some couples, both partners act possessive and give the other partner permission to make decisions for them. If possessive behavior is mutually agreed upon in advance, without any coercive tactics involved, this dynamic is no longer toxic.
我都说了，我是你的了。
Although with certain characters, this might still turn out to be problematic. Moving on to another example. Kissing the uke on the lips without their consent once, maybe even twice, isn't toxic in my opinion. It can be problematic, sure, and you should expect it to be unwelcome. But as one-off instances that aren't part of a pattern of repeatedly crossing the uke's boundaries, it's forgivable. After one or two times, they should have gotten the message that the uke didn't like it, including any other boundary-crossing behaviors. Kissing somebody while they are sleeping is just as problematic, if not a bit more, since the sleeping person isn't conscious to react to what's going on. Apologizing or taking accountability in some other way for past actions can also take away the toxicity, if not even move the character out of the problematic range, in my opinion. It's bad that they did it, but the character allowed for some self-reflection and chose to make it right. Going back to the framing of bad behaviors as acceptable, this might not have a long-lasting negative effect on the characters in the story, but the people who read and watch these stories can internalize these relationship dynamics and the positive outlook on them. To illustrate how this impact on the consumers can manifest itself, let me go back to an example from the first category of toxic characters, Xue Yang from The Untamed. He is, in short, a proper sociopath. A man without empathy, without remorse, who sees everybody around him as beneath him, and who blames everybody else for the things he has done. He murdered more than 50 people, and when he was physically weak, he lied about his identity and cut out the tongues of innocent people to encourage a blind man to kill them, because their inability to speak made them appear as undead dangers. He has a depressing backstory that sheds some light on his behavior, but even if he went through a lot of pain and suffering from his childhood all the way into his adult life, that's an explanation for his antisocial mentality, but it's not an excuse. In spite of everything he has done, his past suffering has garnered a lot of sympathy from some fans of The Untamed, because he does get close to one person. This person shows him kindness over a longer period of time, and Xue Yang is touched by that kindness. The fans enjoy seeing this more human side of Xue Yang, so they pair them together as a couple in their own fanfiction and videos. And I, personally, can't in good conscience call them a ship. Just to be clear, this is not about shipping the two actors together. That's something else entirely, and I have no problem with that at all. And for those who created fanfiction and changed Xue Yang's personality and trajectory so that he isn't such a murderous, abusive sociopath, that's not an issue for me either. I'll take another sassy rebel without all the murder and abuse any day. To my point of why I don't accept this ship, this man Xue Yang is paired with, Xiao Xingchen, is one of the biggest saints to grace that drama universe. The man who becomes blind because he sacrifices his eyes and vision for another man he was close to, Songlan. These fans see Xue Yang's feelings for Xiao Xingchen as a bit of a redemption for him, and many equate these feelings with other The Untamed characters' deep feelings. Now, here is the big problem that these fans who pair Xue Yang in this sociopathic version of him together with Xiao Xingchen don't realize or simply ignore. Xiao Xingchen can't see Xue Yang when they are getting close, which Xue Yang uses to pretend to be somebody else. So their whole close relationship is built on a lie. Xiao Xingchen knows that Xue Yang murdered all those people, and if he had known that he was so close to him at any point while he was blind, he would have done what was necessary to bring him to justice for what he had done. But there's more to the Untamed drama's story that makes this pairing look even worse. When Xiao Xingchen learns that it was Xue Yang next to him all along, that he himself had killed innocent people without knowing, including harming Songlan because Xue Yang had lied to him, Xiao Xingchen mentally breaks down, and Xue Yang laughs at him. He takes pleasure in seeing Xiao Xingchen suffer. And then there's the whole part where Xue Yang tries to turn him into a mindless, undead slave. I'm just gonna stop there. This treatment, whatever Xue Yang feels for Xiao Xingchen, is abuse. And sure, Xue Yang has some feelings for Xiao Xingchen, but to see those feelings as love is, in my opinion, a very toxic view on love. But yeah, to some people, they make a great couple. This illustrates for me how the normalization of abuse, by repeatedly framing it with a romantic lens, can really do something to how fans view couples in general. Because the Untamed drama doesn't display Xueyang and Xiao Xingchen together like it does with the other couples. It does give Xueyang a shred of humanity, which I think is fitting. I don't think bad guy characters should be presented as completely evil people. If the fans view different couples in media with the same lens, what's to stop them from transferring these views onto real people? Taking into account how many fans are women, for those of them who enjoy BL relationships because they see them as ideal relationships, they might learn to accept abusive behavior done to them. Other fans, who might not allow certain abusive behaviors done to themselves, could still find it acceptable in real-life gay couples. I have come across at least one example of a real-life couple who has asked whether one of them has raped the other. Baozi and Hannah. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to find the original footage of the Q&A where that question comes up, because their YouTube account has been deleted. But how often does it happen that fans accept some amount of abuse among people they know personally? I find it really frustrating that toxic behavior has been so romanticized and has become so normal in mainstream BL. Stories that are built up on genuine love and affection can function perfectly well without the semeis being so controlling. And I know that forced sexual acts are a turn-on for some people, but can't the creators be more conscientious and transparent about who the target audience is? There has to be a way to separate the stories that are there to satisfy an itch from those that are just trying to be mainstream. I do have a suggestion or two, but it's worth nothing if nobody sees any value in implementing it. Maybe a label that you can add on the internet pages and for at the beginning of drama episodes? Maybe people just need to be more vocal about not wanting to see so much sexual assault and coercion? I do think it's worth it to find some solution that will help detox some minds. And give us more stories where toxic behavior isn't shown in a positive light, while still allowing for free expression and personal satisfaction. Thank you for watching my video. Subscribe if you liked it and comment below. Take care.